Hey everybody, Saigan here. Felt like doing a Quester's Rest blog. It's been a while. Has it? I think I did one when Dragon Quest Heroes announced that it was coming stateside. There's not really any particular reason for this other than I felt like recording something. There's a couple of little bits of news, tidbits, if you will, plus some recommended reading material. First and foremost, I have opened up a Facebook page to go along with the YouTube channel. You can find it below, probably, or maybe a link somewhere around here. I don't know how I'm going to link it yet. Don't look at me yet. But, you know, it's another place where you can stay updated with the videos, depending on how you want to get your feed, or if you don't trust YouTube's subscription feed, which, you know, you'll have plenty of reason to not trust YouTube's subscription feed. It's been broken for like 2 years now. So there's that. Go ahead and like the page, or don't. I'm not a cop. I can't make you do anything. What else? Oh, as far as like family news is concerned, Perry has wound up leaving her job, and I'm going to do a shameless plug for her art page. In addition to selling prints and things, she's also open to doing commissions. And I think you can find details for that on her page, which I will also link, along with, I don't know, maybe edited a piece of art somewhere, like over here. Betcha I put it right here. Yeah. She recently did a Poison Ivy piece. She's been working on a Harley Quinn piece because comic books are awesome. Yo. Maybe I can get her to do like Black Cat. Yeah, Black Cat. What else? The nice thing about her quitting her job, in addition to it was making her just completely miserable, what she was doing before, she's got a savings built up, so I don't actually have to worry about this being a drain on my finances also. She's just going to do the art thing for a couple of months. If it takes off, fantastic. If it doesn't, she'll keep working at it, but she'll also get a job again, so I don't have to pay for 4 people. Because right now it's, you know, a pretty even split between her and I, and it works out pretty well. But yeah, art stuff. Perry Onan. Go check it out. What else? Reading material. This is what I kind of really wanted to chat about. So the other day, an old boss of mine linked a webcomic called Darths and Droids. And this webcomic has consumed my life in the last couple of days since I first saw it. And essentially what it is the Star Wars saga, starting from Super Crummy, Episode 1. I just finished up Episode 2 today, and, you know, it keeps going. I'm not sure where it is now, but I know that it keeps going through the Star Wars saga. And it's cut up and kind of looks like it's a comic book using scenes from the movie, but all of the text and dialogue plays out as though the entire thing is just a Dungeons and Dragons session gone like terribly right, because it's totally what a D&D session works out like usually in those awful situations. And it's so funny how like certain characters come to be in it, like Jar Jar Binks, for instance. Everybody hates Jar Jar, right? Well, what happens in Darths and Droids, and this isn't too much of a spoiler because it's way early in the series, is one of the players brings his younger sister over. She's like, oh, can I play? Well, yeah, sure. And then she like just jumps right into it. She's like, oh, well, I'm an alien. I'm going to be named Jar Jar Binks, and this is what I look like. And the DM's like, that's really fucking stupid, but okay. And she talks like Jar Jar. It's the perfect explanation for the character design of Jar Jar Binks. It was designed by a child. And it just goes from there, and it is totally, totally worth reading. And I'll link that below too, or maybe somewhere off to the side. Theme of the night, I don't know yet. So I've really been enjoying reading that, and it's spawned a lot of conversations between me and my friends regarding pencil and paper role-playing, because, God, I have been playing D&D off and on. I use D&D as a blanket term for pencil and paper role-playing games. I've been playing since middle school. God, I must have been 13 when I started. And it's actually kind of a cool story for how it came to be. Now, I'd been into games for a while before this. I'd been in chess club since I was in like the 4th grade. So gaming wasn't really something that was new to me, and I'd been into RPGs for a while. Everybody who watches my channel knows my history with Dragon Quest growing up. So the way that I came into learning about Dungeons and Dragons is it wasn't introduced to me by anybody. It wasn't something that I saw other people playing. It was something that I wound up discovering on my own, kind of like a buried treasure. What happened was some neighbors down the street, and this was a long time ago, guys, so I might have some of the details mixed up, but the basics. We had some friends down the street, and I would watch the house for them whenever they would go on trips. You know, I'd go in once a day, 2 or 3 times a day, check in on the pets, let the dogs out, feed, water cats, scoop cat litter, etc., etc., etc. And I'd typically make like, $20 for a weekend of doing that, which isn't really, a major deal. It took maybe a total of 10 minutes per trip. They were seriously right down the street from us, like maybe 4 houses. And I remember they were doing a garage sale one day to get rid of some old stuff, and I saw some books sitting in a box, and it was really interesting because it had just this fantasy art on it. And I can actually probably dig it out for you, but I don't feel like digging for it right now. But, it said Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition across the top of it. And, I flipped through it, and I'm like, what is this? Is this a game? And the mother of the household was like, oh, I used to play that when I was in college. I was totally interested in it, just totally intrigued by the cover art. I was flipping through the rule books, and I don't know why. This tome filled with rules. Tons and tons of rules and charts and graphs, etc., etc., etc. And there was a stack of these books. It filled up a box. I don't know why that appealed to me. Like, looking at it, looking at Dungeons and Dragons books and putting myself, in the spot of like somebody who's an outsider, somebody who doesn't play Dungeons and Dragons, looking at those books, like, that's a lot of rules. Who the hell would play something with so many rules? I don't know why I went for it. I really don't know why I went for it. I was totally intrigued by it, and she's like, okay, well, tell you what, I was going to sell this box for like $40 or $50. Do you want to just take it as payment for the next time you house sit? I was like, yeah, totally, absolutely, cool. Next time I house sit, it's on me. So I brought the box home, dumped everything out on the floor, and the first thing that I found was the Dark Sun box. And the way that D&D works and the way that it got sold was there were different adventure worlds, there were different campaign settings, varying between different kinds of, fantasy tropes. Like, there was the Greyhawk campaign setting, which I think was the first official one that was, heavily focused on barbarians and things. And then there's the one that everybody later on became familiar with, like Neverwinter was really popular, and no, not Neverwinter. Although I think Neverwinter might have been one. Forgotten Realms. That's what I'm thinking of. There was Forgotten Realms. There was Dragonlance. There was Ravenloft. The first one I picked up because those other ones weren't in there. They had the campaign setting for Dark Sun, which is like high fantasy, Frank Herbert's Dune. Now, I had read Dune, so of course I see this cover with all these aliens and monsters and shit fighting on this desert planet. I'm like, oh god, I have to open this. So I threw it open, and it kind of has quick start rules, like basic explanation of the rules, but not the full set of rules. And you discover very quickly going through a campaign, like, I don't have a fucking chart for that. I don't know what psionics are. I need more books. But I threw that open. I read through it. Had no idea what it was talking about. But it kept referring to the second edition player's handbook. So I went through the box, and I found the second edition player's handbook. I got really excited. I was like, oh, sweet. So I read through it once. And it was very confusing to me. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go from the beginning, and I'm just going to play. And I'd completely ignored the fact that it required a game master. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to play it as though it were a solo game, kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure. So I go through, I look at the character creation system. I'm like, okay, cool, I can create a character. But I want to play myself. I want to know how I would do in this situation. So I checked all the charts and everything to figure out like what stats meant what. And, you know, I kind of guessed at, you know, where 13-year-old skinny little Saigan would be on there, and I think I barely qualified for being a rogue or a thief or whatever it was called back in AD&D 2nd edition. And I died in the first encounter, and it took like an hour to figure out that I had died because it gets worse and worse the more I look back at this and how inept I was at trying to play Dungeons and Dragons by myself without any guidance. And the only dice that she had left, the woman of this household, the only die that she had left was a D100. I actually wound up writing a program on my TI-85 Texas Instruments graphing calculator to do the die rolls for me, because I didn't actually have the physical dice. I didn't wind up getting the dice until like 2 months later when I discovered, oh, these hobby shops where I go and pick up Magic the Gathering cards, because I was way into Magic the Gathering. That's what these dice are for. Going back, I died just horribly. Horribly. A 13-year-old boy cannot survive in the world of Dark Sun. That was kind of disappointing, but it also gave me an idea of what the rules kind of worked, or how they worked. So I popped back again, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to roll up a character the way you're supposed to. And I rolled up a character and everything, and I got about maybe two encounters this time into the Dark Sun campaign before it started referencing psionics. I was like, the hell is that? Well, please refer to the Psionics Handbook. I'm like, fuck, another book. So I go through the books, and I'm thinking that this was like a complete set or something. I wasn't even remotely aware of the magnitude of the hobby that I had just kind of stumbled into. Did not have the Psionics Handbook. I start calling around to the different hobby stores. Find one that has the Psionics Handbook. I think that weekend I was able to go out and get it, and that was my allowance money that I was going to spend on Magic cards, and I spent it on Dungeons and Dragons instead. And I think my Magic the Gathering friends might have been disappointed in me if I had told them. So I got the Psionics Handbook, and I still have it, and it's actually still in really good condition. I've kept that book very well maintained. And I go through it, like, oh, okay, this absolutely plays a giant role in the Dark Sun campaign world, and it did. Like, this is a required supplement to play Dark Sun, because everybody is at least a low-level psionicist in Dark Sun. You absolutely need the book. So I start going off of that, and I'm reading the rule book almost daily. And I'm reading it at school during breaks. I'm just going through the player's handbook over and over and over again. I start reading the Dungeon Master's Guide. And I start like really getting a feel for how the game is supposed to work, because in the Dungeon Master Guide, they had examples of Dungeon Masters interacting with players, where the Dungeon Master is like, okay, you're in this long hallway, etc., etc., etc. Walls are stone and cold, and there's, you know, murky air wafting up from the corridors below, etc., etc., etc. I was like, oh, I could just be a storyteller. So I got my sister, Kristen, the same one who did that Moogle drawing back over there. Right there. That one there. It's way back there. You can't really see it. I got her to play. I got my friend Christopher from down the street to play. And I think that was really my first D&D group, was my sister and my friend. We sat down together, and I'd read the rule books enough that I knew how the game was supposed to work, and I helped them create characters, and that was really fun and interesting, and I got to explain everything, because suddenly, like, all this knowledge that I've been absorbing suddenly just sprouted out, like vomiting Dungeons and Dragons knowledge, and everything that I was reading finally made sense because I had people to talk to about it. And we got their characters made, and I flip open the campaign manual, and we start running through just the one that came with the set, because I hadn't written my own campaign or anything yet. I didn't feel familiar enough with the rules to even try, so I wanted to run some of the pre-made ones that, you know, came in the Dark Sun box and came in the box of Dungeons and Dragons stuff that I got from the nice woman down the street. And I'm going through the explanations for everything. I'm driving the story. I'm painting a picture. My mom pokes her head around the corner. She's like, Steven, you're kind of dominating the conversation right now. And I didn't know what to say. I was like, wait, am I? Isn't this what I'm supposed to be doing? And Kristen just, bam, jumped right in there. She's like, he's a storyteller for this game that we're playing. He explains everything that's going on, and then we decide what we're going to do. I was like, yeah, what she said, that was perfect. And my mom's like, oh, okay. Disappeared back to what she was doing. My parents never had a problem with me playing Dungeons and Dragons. I think they were really happy that I was socializing at all at the time, because I was not a social butterfly. I'm still not. The guys who went to the Dragon Quest meetup up in Denver that I went to, really friendly group of people. I was probably the quietest one there, and I think that might have been a little bit off-putting. Like, I feel bad about it looking back. Like, I feel I might have seemed kind of rude. I swear I was not, guys. I'm just super quiet around people in real life that I haven't spent a lot of time with. God, Reggie could attest to it. Pat could attest to it. It took, you know, my closest best friends. They're kind of my closest best friends because they understand and kind of understood that from the get-go. Like, oh, this guy's really damn quiet, but, you know, he doesn't seem terrible. I'm going to keep hanging out with him whether he likes it or not. Surprise, I have lifelong friends. So that was my first introduction to Dungeons and Dragons, and reading Darths and Droids has just brought all of these fantastic memories back of playing Dungeons and Dragons, meeting new people because of it, sitting down around a table, rolling dice, eating snacks, drinking then soda, now beer, because we still play from time to time, and it is always such a blast. And I don't know, I just kind of wanted to chat about it for a while, because I've talked about how video games have made up a good portion of my life. And I think I've mentioned Dungeons and Dragons offhand before, but I've never really gotten into how much I enjoyed it and like how good it was for me. Like, it was a really, really good thing for me. And we've noticed this at work too. There's a couple of other guys who I work with. We haven't actually ever been in a group before, but they have all played role-playing games as well. And we talk about it. It's like sharing old war stories, because we share these hilarious things that have happened to us in the past into our parties. And it totally came up during one of the meetings where one of my coworkers, who is a fantastic worker, he's certainly 10 times harder worker than me, he totally choked because he gets nervous talking in front of people. And I mean, I do too. I'm nervous right now. I've gotten really, really good at just talking anyways. And a lot of that came from Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of that comes from, God, we're 3, almost 4 years into doing Let's Plays now. So I've gotten comfortable with it. I'm still terrified out of my damn mind that people are going to be watching this. My vlogs usually get a couple hundred views. So a couple hundred people are going to be watching. I shouldn't be thinking about those numbers. Anyhow, one of the guys just totally stepped in, just hit every single mark in their presentation, was able to just ad-lib through it with correct information, because this is stuff that he knew. And he's been in situations before where he just has to go with what he knows and present himself as a character. And that actually translates really well into a life skill for dealing with meetings and interviews and things like that. Now I'm realizing that I actually do interview really well. Huh. Gaming is great. So yeah, go read Darths and Droids. If you've never done any kind of pencil and paper role-playing before, totally recommend it. There's plenty of free options out there. Dice are not expensive. There's plenty of tools online that you can just roll dice yourself. If you have a smartphone or a tablet of pretty much any generation, I got my smartphone when it was already a couple of years old at a pawn shop because I'm a cheap ass and I didn't want to spend more than $50 on my phone. And I have like no less than 20 or 30 dice rolling apps. There's plenty of free things online that you can go and read to get into role-playing. It doesn't have to be Dungeons and Dragons. There's lots of systems. If I was going to recommend one to you, I would probably say go with Basic Fantasy RPG. Some people are going to disagree with that because there are some things about it that are kind of archaic. But rose-colored glasses time. It reflects the Dungeons and Dragons of old. It takes the model from the original Dungeons and Dragons. It takes the chemistry of the original Dungeons and Dragons, and then it modernized the rule set with what everybody pretty much uses these days, which is D20. I know that there's a couple of other systems that don't use D20. There's D10, which I'm actually a fan of D10. I think D10 works very well for some systems, but D20 definitely has a better grid-based combat system if you're into miniatures. I got off track. Basic Fantasy RPG. Totally free system. Everything's online. You can download and print out the PDFs if you want. Or if you enjoy the rule set enough, which I did, they actually have, I think it's Lulu. They also have on Amazon. You can buy, at cost, printed versions of the rulebooks. They're like $5 a piece, which is way cheaper than D&D books. Even used old school D&D books are still going to be about, retail price. Their value rarely changes. Sometimes you get lucky and find them for cheap, but with all the supplements that are required sometimes, or, the additional rules that you might want to squeeze in, like that's really how Wizards makes their money. Wizards of the Coast is the company that currently publishes Dungeons and Dragons. It's not required And in fact, so long as you have the player's handbook, you're pretty much set. I mean, once you have the player's handbook and you have the rules set for everything, those are the basic rules. This is how combat works. This is how encounters work. This is how experience points work. This is how character creation works. From there, you are free to create. You can create your own character classes, create your own races. The sky is the limit. And it's a wonderful, wonderful hobby to get into that costs as much as you want it to. It can be totally free, or you can totally go for broke and spend thousands of dollars on miniatures and paint them and do modeling and get into crafting, you know, these old castles where you actually have the miniatures play out combat, and it winds up working a lot like, you know, a strategy RPG like Final Fantasy Tactics. That's actually very similar to how miniature combat works. That's it. Wow, they're 25 minutes. I'm impressed with myself. Didn't think I was going to be able to talk that long about just Dungeons and Dragons. Well, I guess there was a bit of other stuff at the beginning, but okay. So, YouTube channel has a Facebook page. Perionen's doing art. Go check it out because she's very talented, and I love her, and I said to. Read Darths and Droids. If you're a Star Wars fan or a role-playing fan, it's great. And if you're either, it'll probably get you into the opposite. Gaming is good for you. That's all. Saigan out. Thanks for watching, everybody. This is another Quester's Rest, and I will see you all next time.